So I'm back in the shop. It's been a while. Whatever's in the air has been giving me fits. So I apologize. My voice is cracking like a kid going through puberty here. But nonetheless, I'm here in the shop. I was able to get a new bandsaw blade for my trusty Atlas that I inherited. It's actually my dad's, but it came from his dad. He was a carpenter, so we converted it over. I put a metal blade on it, cut it out pretty nice. I ended up using my trusty $50 Harbor Freight belt sander. This thing is cantankerous as they get. That tracking that belt up there is impossible, so I leave it disengaged all the time. But I've had this thing for 10 years, and it cost me $50. And for $50, I can't complain. Yeah, it's a pain in the butt to work with, but it does what it needs to do for the amount I use it. I don't use it terribly often, but it does what I need to do. For $50, I can't complain. But anyway, I had mentioned this in an earlier video. I bought this this filler neck from Boyd's Welding when I bought my tank. It's just got a standard cap that goes on it and just a short section here. And basically what I'm going to do here is I cut this plate out, this circular plate, and I'm going to weld this nut. I'm just going to tack that nut on there. And the way this is actually going to work is this is going to sit just like this, and I'm going to tack this or weld this backer plate to the back side of the filler neck there, and this will be inside the truck. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fabricate a bracket that comes up off of the back side of the sheet metal here, over and down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a hole in it so that when I draw it down, it's going to pull this back up against the gasket on the outside, so that the gas cap is actually going to sit on the gasket. It doesn't have to be very tight, but what this is going to do is allow it so it doesn't go in or out. So you can't grab a hold of the gas cap on the outside and pull the whole neck out. And conversely, on the opposite direction, you can't push it through easily because that the gas cap itself is sitting up against the gasket on the truck, the grommet on the truck. So I've seen a guy do this before, and it looked pretty simple, so I thought I'd cut out some brackets and do it. Just simple, easy peasy. So what I did off camera here, just kind of get my bandsaw set up, is cut that out, sanded it smooth, marked my center, drilled a hole, and I've got a bolt just basically GM nutted up against both sides of this, and I'm going to tack this nut onto this plate before I tack it onto here and build a bracket. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tack all this together, put it in the truck, and do some measurements and make a bracket. So I've got some 10 gauge stock over there I'm going to cut out. So anyway, I'm going to quit rambling, and I'm going to go ahead and weld that on. I don't have my GoPro tonight, so I'm going to try to film it with this camera and see what happens. All right, so I got this thing sitting in here, and I think it's going to work out. So on the outside of the truck, I have got the neck coming out, and it's sitting flat. The lip on the cap will not let this go past this grommet right here. So I'm going to use that to my advantage. I've got this plate welded on here, and I've got the nut welded on the back side. So I'm going to make that bracket that kind of comes, and it sits here and here. And what it does is going to come out and over. And what I can do is I can take this nut and apply pressure. And what it's going to do is it's going to pull this whole assembly towards the inside of the truck. I think it's going to work out. So it's kind of like a gauge, and how you mount a gauge into into a cluster, into a pillar pod. It has that bracket on the back side. I'm going to use that same philosophy here on this thing here. So I am going to go to get some measurements for that bracket, and I'll kind of show how I lay that out on some plate, and we will cut that and fab that up real quick. Well, it's a good thing I'm not a film producer or something, because I forgot to hit record when I did all of this. Yeah, that's how it goes today. I guess I'm a little foggy with the sickness and everything. But here it is. It's done. Just got to paint it, actually, and seam seal it, and seal it all up so that there's no water gets through there. But basically what I've done here, to kind of reiterate, is I'm using the gas cap as the flange of the gas cap as a stop on this side to keep from pulling in. It sits up against this rubber grommet right here. On the back side, I'm kind of doing like you do mounting a gauge, like an odometer gauge, into a pillar pod, or however you're going to mount it. Is they use the face of the gauge, the bezel of the gauge, to hold the front, to hold it in, and then you're using this bracket here to kind of clamp it all together. And so that's what I did. So I just made it was about 3/4 of an inch wide, 6 inches long, with 1 inch legs on there, and just bolted on there. So it worked out perfect. I do have a grade 8 bolt in there, just because it's the only 3/8 bolt I had here. So worked out perfect. I did put some rubber, some 1/8 inch rubber behind the legs on this clamp here, just to kind of keep the bracket from denting the metal. I mean, these old trucks are pretty thick, but just to be safe, I went ahead and put that in there. So that's it. Everything on this thing went pretty smoothly. Again, I apologize for not hitting record, ding dong move, but I think it turned out pretty good. Sits in there real nice. And I guess, I haven't even taken the cap off, but it doesn't come off the way it's sitting in there. So there's no chance of somebody trying to open that up. So I guess I could put a locking cap on there, but I kind of like how this looks. It's real tight, real flush. So that works out perfect. So that is another project done. So I think next up I'm going to work on the bracket for the relay center there. I'm going to get some cardboard and make up a template and get to cutting on that as well. So I'm inside the truck here, and I worked up a little bit of a template out of some paper here. This is actually a manila folder I cut up, and I've kind of got a bracket that I can mount this fuse panel to and have some stability to it. So I put a little bit of a gusset back here. I think I'm going to run a gusset across the top just so this isn't so flimsy. I'm going to see what it's like. I'll probably go ahead and cut it in there, and then I can just bend it over, and so I can tack it here and tack it here, so it gives it some strength. Basically what this does is it just kind of sits on the back. It's just going to go around the wires like that. You really can't see, but go around the wires, like that, and have 4 bolts that bolt to this fuse panel here. It's kind of I don't know. I get why they use these things, but they're kind of a pain in the butt to mount. So what I'm going to do is just make a bracket that kind of just sits it up just right here, and then that's kind of what I've come up with here. So I'm going to go ahead and go transfer this to some sheet metal real quick, and we will get to cutting. All right, so I've got my paper template transferred over to the steel here, and what I do is I trace it with a Sharpie, and then I mark which side is my cut side. So that's what all these arrows are. And then I take a scribe, and I scribe. You really can't, well, you can kind of see that one there. I scribe in the black Sharpie where I need to make my cut. So I've got these cuts, this U here, and then this top line here. This is the top of my template, and I added a 1/2 inch lip to match this here so that I can bend it over and get some rigidity into that. So I'm going to take it over the bandsaw here real quick, and I'm going to cut this and see how it looks. All right, so the bracket's done. I ended up getting rid of the top gusset here across the top. A, it was kind of going to be a pain to break, and B, it doesn't need it. I got to thinking this is a 10 gauge steel, so it's not going anywhere. What I was worried about was pushing and pulling on the fuses here, it kind of wobbling, but it's not going to go anywhere. It definitely needed one on the vertical section here because that's only a 1/2 inch right there, so it would have wobbled a little bit. So it's all done. I cleaned it up. I ended up just using, I got a neighbor who's got a brake, but he's not here today, so I just used the vise and a brass hammer. So it kind of marred it up a little bit, but this is under the seat. It's not a show car. So all done. I got it all cleaned up. Everything's good to go. So what I'm going to do now is locate some holes, drill some holes, and see what we can do about finishing this bad boy up. All right, the bracket's done. It turned out really well. I got the holes put in it, so it's not going to sit. I just have it sitting underneath this bracket right now to, or maybe I will. I don't know. It's just so it'll stand up. I don't have any of the screws, so it's actually held in with a zip tie right now. It will have actually machine screws in there. So I'm glad to have that done. So now I can get all these parts. I've got the gas cap I did earlier. The pedal adapter is over there. This bracket and then these brackets I need to get primed and painted so that I can put the interior back together. So turned out really well. I did measure, the seat sits here obviously, and from the bottom of that flange on the seat to the bottom of the seat is 4 inches, a little more than 4 inches, and that's out here somewhere. So I went ahead and measured just to double check this from this rib here, which actually this goes uphill a little bit this way, but from here to the top of there is like 3 3/4. So the seat frame is actually out here, so the seat actually goes up in this way here where the springs are. So this fits nicely. I originally thought I was going to put it a little bit lower, but I wanted to be able to access these fuses down here in this relay and just be able to pull them out without having to take the seat out to do it. So I made it a little bit taller. I'm hoping that doesn't come back to bite me in the butt when I put the seat in, but we'll see. But that's it. I think it turned out really well. So I am going to go ahead and, I do have one thing. I had a couple questions here about this radiator, and I thought I'd go ahead and pop it in this video about the fittings and how this works. So this is the entropy radiator for the LS motor. And we had some questions about the fittings on both sides. So the way this works here is the one in the filler neck here is for the overflow because it's on the top side of the relief valve on the cap. So this is the overflow, and it is, I think it's a 1/4 inch, actually I think that's 1/8 inch MPT. This is a 1/4 inch MPT, and this one here is the steam vent that goes over to the motor. This is just mocked up right now. Obviously, the upper radiator hose. This one down here is a 3/8 NPT, and it is actually what Entropy uses to, they put a temperature sender in there to run their fan controller. Since I'm running the factory ECM to run my fans, I just put a plug in that. And then the one down on the bottom, down there, is the sacrificial rod. It's the anode in this thing. Since it's an aluminum radiator, you want the sacrificial rod to get eaten up, not the aluminum. So, because of all the electrolysis in the antifreeze. So, and then on the driver's side over here, this is where Entropy puts the transmission cooler. Since there's not a lot of room over there, and this is a cross flow, they put it over here. So these are actually, and I know I'm probably gonna get this wrong, I think they're 1/2-20 fittings, which does not work with a 3/8 line. So what I'm gonna do, a 3/8 line, which is like what this 480 uses, I think it's a 5/8 18, and I'm probably gonna get this wrong, inverted flare fitting. So what you can do is you can get a fitting here that is adapts from 1/2-20 to -6, and that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna run my lines down here somewhere, and then I'm going to use the factory 480 lines, the hard lines, up as far as I can, and then I'll convert them to AN, probably with a compression coupling, or I'm not sure what I'm going to do there yet. That's up next. So, but I wanted to answer a couple questions there. I've had a couple questions about these. I'm still going to kind of go into a little more depth about the wiring once the truck is kind of back together, so it makes a little more logical sense, because right now everything's kind of in disarray. But that's it for today. I do appreciate everybody watching. Again, if you have any questions, please let me know. I'd love to hear from you guys. If you see anything I'm doing wrong, please let me know, because like I say, I'm just chipping away at this thing. So anyway, appreciate everybody watching, and we will see you next time.